Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Sunday morning show. Joined by DJ. DJ, how's it going, man?
I'm good. A little bit tired after watching an action-packed Saturday, but good football. So, what's
Yeah,
up?
and it is certainly a nervous Sunday morning for Canes fans. We'll get into that in a second. Of course, we're talking about the playoffs, but first we will talk about our sponsor, which is 305 800 Pain. After an accident, every minute counts. With one call to 305 800 Pain, you get immediate access to trusted doctors and attorneys who guide you step by step. With an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau, they are a brand you can trust. Much like 5 Reasons Canes, 305 800 Pain is focused on the local community of Miami-Dade County and South Florida. They'll handle all your accident needs, including car accidents, personal injuries, and related legal matters. So after an accident, be sure to call 305 800 Pain. The number is the brand 305 800 Pain. Después de un accidente, cada minuto cuenta. Con una llamada a 305-800 Pain, ustedes pueden obtener acceso inmediatamente a doctores y abogados para el control del proceso. Con una clasificación de L Plus del Better Business Bureau, pueden confiar en ellos. 305-800 Pain tiene mucho en común con las 5 zonas que están enfocadas en la comunidad local de Miami-Dade County y el Florida del Sur. Ellos pueden ayudar con todo después de un accidente, incluyendo accidente de carro, lesiones personales y otras cosas legales relacionadas. Entonces, después de un accidente, llama 305-800 Pain. El número es el nombre de la marca, 305-800 Pain. Oh boy, DJ. So let's set the scene. So we obviously, did a show last week before the rankings came out. And then when the rankings came out, it was Bama had moved up to 9 inexplicably for barely beating Auburn, which the committee was really impressed for them beating a 5-win team barely. Notre Dame's held steady at 10, BYU was 11, and Miami was 12. So the committee chair then explained, well, it's not really head-to-head because there's a team in between BYU and Miami. Now, a couple of things on this. First of all, we are 2 weeks removed from talking about comparative pools. And if they're in the same pool, head matters. Now they got to be right next to each other, and they just inserted a team in the middle to prevent that from happening. So the whole thing is being manipulated. But everyone latched on to that. Oh, well, now if they're next to each other, if BYU loses, then they have to put Miami in. They don't have to do anything. They just make up a different rule every week. First, Miami need to show offensive consistency, and obviously the last 4 games they killed everyone and were consistent across the board. Then it became comparative pools. Then it became they have to be next to each other. It'll be something else today. And obviously the results yesterday kind of went exactly how Miami would want. You've got BYU had to lose, otherwise everyone's basically. BYU getting blown out, though, I think pretty clearly it's going to move them out of this conversation. 2 times blown out by Texas Tech. And then, there were 2 options there with the Bama-Georgia game. You either wanted Bama to win and then have them literally just be saying Miami and Notre Dame for the last spot, and we're going to ignore head-to-head, which I think they would have done. I'm just being straightforward on this. I know everyone's like, oh, if Bama had somehow won that, then they couldn't keep if they're going to ignore head-to-head, they're going to ignore it and they'll reverse engineer the rationale. And I think people need to be mentally prepared for that because they made up this they have to be next to each other shit last Tuesday. That is not in the criteria. It's never once been mentioned ever. So they literally just made something up and shoved BYU in the middle to keep Notre Dame in. So the idea that they're not going to manipulate something this week, I'm sorry. Like, that was never in the cards. So, but, if Bama had won, Bama obviously then has the automatic bid from the SEC. Georgia's definitely not dropping out. And so then you literally do have the 1 spot for Miami and Notre Dame. And the rationale was, well, then they would put Miami on head-to-head. I don't think they would have. I'm just going to be blunt here. If Miami's not in today, there was nothing that would have put them in. But the other positive scenario would be Bama getting blown out so badly that it's pretty obvious they are not a top 10 team. And that is what happened. That team has no business being in the playoffs. They're not very good. They played horribly for a month now. They kind of didn't look good before that. They obviously got killed by Florida State, who we all know is terrible. Like, this team doesn't belong in the playoffs. And then I guess, a little bit of icing on the cake for the Canes yesterday is it's been well documented. I'm sure anyone watching this is aware that it's not, even though we colloquially say it's P4 teams and then one G5, that's not what it actually is. It's the top 5 conference winners. And since Duke won the ACC and they're not even ranked and they're 8-5, they're likely not going to be one of the top 5 conference winners. And so now there's another line of thinking that, well, they wouldn't lock the ACC out entirely because there is a lot of money at stake, and there's political stuff going on with that. So then they wouldn't lock the ACC out entirely.
They should, but they won't. You're right.
Well, no, they shouldn't because Miami should. But I don't think the SEC Invitational that we call the college football playoff gives a crap. They will put the 5th SEC team in and lock the ACC out. They absolutely will. So that's where we stand now. So basically, it's come down to, with all the auto bids claimed, we're looking at the 3 teams are Alabama, Notre Dame, and Miami, and they're going to be ranked 9, 10, and 11. The team that's ranked 11 is going to be out. That's where we're sitting now. That was a long explainer to start. DJ, I'm going to throw it over to you. How do you think? Let's start with, how do you think this will play out? Or do you want to do should? Which one do we want to do first? How do you think it should play out? How do you think it will play out? What do you want to go with first? Here? Or are they the same?
Probably will play out. Let's start with will.
How do you think it will play out? Go for it.
I think Alabama will drop 1 spot, although they should drop more. And for some reason, I feel like they're still going to put Notre Dame in the playoff conversation. They're already in, but I don't think their status is going to change. I still think Miami is going to be on the outside looking in because, quite frankly, if what Miami did to this point isn't convincing by the committee, isn't convincing enough for the committee now, it's not going to be come the next set of rankings. And I thought it was cute when they showed the committee doing their probably weekly watch party to determine the entire rankings of all of college football. I appreciated that really strong insight and insightful look at a group of people who probably don't even know what they're ranking. So thank you for that, television. I appreciated that. But I don't see much changing except maybe Bama moving down, and then I have difficulty believing that anything will happen to Notre Dame to where they won't be in.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and I think we should state this unequivocally, Miami is about to get royally screwed, is what is happening.
Yeah.
So, but I agree. And what you described is, I think, how they're going to try and launder it. And what I mean by that is they're going to bring back up that, well, we didn't compare Miami and Notre Dame head to head because Alabama's in between the two of them. Mm-hmm. And that's a fake thing they made up last week. And also, they're the people choosing where to put teams. So the idea that they can just, if they don't want to consider head to head, wedge a team in between the two teams and say, well, we didn't have to do it. Look at us. We're geniuses. That is ridiculous. This whole thing is ridiculous. When you look at the committee's rankings and what they're supposed to base their rankings on, it's printed on their website. It's clear as day. They said, these are our principles. Number 1, strength of schedule. I think Notre Dame's 42, Miami's 44. It's basically a tie. Number 2, head-to-head. Miami beat them, as we all know. Number 3, common opponents. They've each played. I know people have been going back and forth on like, oh, they beat this team worse, they beat that team. That doesn't matter. They both went 4-0. That's a push. They're all 4 blowouts. None of those games were competitive. So, and then number 4 is the Jordan Travis. If someone got catastrophically injured, unless your Lane Kiffin quits, then you move up for some reason. Condition. So there is no rationale for putting Notre Dame in other than we just want to. They keep saying we think they're better. We think they're more complete. Based on zero evidence, though. Because all the numbers are basically push. Yeah, Notre Dame's like one spot ahead in FPI. That is not like some kind of substantive difference where you ignore it. The whole thing is a fraud. And then for Alabama, too, since when do we not punish teams for getting blown out in their conference championship game? We've been doing that since the beginning of time. I don't understand this whole, like, well, you can't do that. Since when? In fact, a certain school in Alabama benefited from this when Auburn beat Georgia and Alabama during the regular season. This was in 2017, I believe. So they they blew out Georgia by like 23 points. They beat Alabama by 12. They go to the SEC championship game. They had 2 losses. They had 1 loss, and then Alabama. They had 2 losses. Alabama had 1. They were in front of them. They lose to Georgia. They drop behind the team they beat the week before, and Alabama went to the playoffs. What do you mean you can't punish teams for losing? They just made that up last night when Bama was getting killed. Like, I don't even understand what that is. But here's the thing. If you're saying that, then how come Ohio State's not still number 1? If you're not punishing, you're punishing them, right? They lost, you're going to move them down. I'm assuming they're going to make Indiana number 1. How? The game, you can't punish Ohio State for losing. That's not fair, right? They literally just made this up in this singular instance, and that's been a pattern with this committee. If you take the logic they've applied to when Miami is involved and apply it anywhere else, it makes 0 sense. The head-to-head, every single other place, they've moved the team that won in front. No one thinks Oklahoma's even good, but they're up there because they beat Alabama. Like, they wedded themselves to head-to-head in every other instance. And this conference championship game, if you lose, you can't get punished. That's not a rule. That's never been the case. Teams have dropped out. Wisconsin went undefeated a few years ago and lost their conference championship game and got kicked the hell out of the playoffs. Like, what are you talking about? They just made that up. Like, and Alabama has benefited from this multiple times too, where they missed because there was a time where the SEC West was significantly stronger than the East. And they would sit on their couch and like LSU would go play the conference championship game and they would get in from their couch. This happened multiple times, and all of a sudden you can't do that. That team is in peril because they were already on the bubble. The idea that like a team that's barely in as an at-large can lose like that and still get in, that's invalidating the game. Like I don't. And the other part of this too is, as much as everyone, yes, they should, by the way, shits on the ACC for that ridiculous tiebreaker that allowed Duke to win it. Bama is the 5th best team in the SEC, and they won the tiebreaker for the same kind of reasons. We don't include any out of conference, so their loss to Florida State doesn't matter. And then they do the whole, well, Bama beat Georgia, Georgia beat Mississippi, Mississippi beat Oklahoma, Oklahoma beat Bama, and they put it in their thing and then spit out Bama's the top team, even though they're 5th in that conference because everyone knows they lost to Florida State. That's a thing that happened. and so they go in there as the 5th best team in the SEC and get blown the hell off the field. By the way, same stadium a week ago, Georgia Tech took that team to the last play of the game. So don't tell me like no one can play with Georgia. This Alabama team is not a top 10 team. They're not. They've proven it time from the first game to the last game. They've proven it. They have 3 losses. They'll be the first team to ever make the playoff with 3 losses. But I think I agree with your assessment of what they're going to do.
Yeah. If they haven't changed their minds by now or seen what Miami has been able to do throughout the entirety of the season, and including that strong, end to the season where they blew out teams in the last 4 games, then they're not going to change anything. And it sucks because they should. And, I saw a bunch of times yesterday where, they're going through all the tiebreakers and all the ESPN guys and whatever saying, Miami has a case here. Like, yeah, no shit.
But yeah, and I think what's happened over this last week, largely because, look, Miami is a city we have a pretty strong media apparatus, which includes the two of us, frankly. I've been shit posting for weeks now. I do think it influenced the narrative. I am doing my best out here, man. I'm out here. I don't think it's going to help, but I go down swinging. But I mean, I think all of us have collectively forced that discussion and pointed out repeatedly the absurdity of saying, well, we just think Notre Dame is better, even though there's no actual statistical evidence, and they lost when they played. And I think that did finally creep in, like you said, because all of a sudden the talking heads on ESPN are like, well, of course they have to put Miami in. What are we doing over here? And at the end, by the end of the Alabama-Georgia game, Herbstreit was just like, well, Miami's definitely in. And this is a Notre Dame-Bama conversation. And I'm like, okay. But the committee has not taken that stance. And as many people have pointed out, their original ranking of putting Miami at 18 was wrong. Miami was never 18th. Like losing an overtime game on the road after like the refs did what they did is not enough to make you 18th. Just to keep in mind, Tennessee never beat anyone this year and was ranked 19th last week when Vanderbilt blew them out. Dropping Miami to 18th was insane. And so then they've been playing behind the eight ball, playing catch up. And it got to the point now where it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was over when Miami was ranked 18th.
It was over when Miami was ranked 18th partially, and then it was confirmed, I think, last week. Because it would have been so easy to say, hey, now that the season's over, and we've got all of the data in, we now have the 4 common opponents. We've got Miami just blew out a ranked team, so they kind of mitigated Notre Dame. Before this week, Notre Dame had this really good win at Pitt where they handled them. Now Miami has the same win. That brings them right in line. We're going to use head-to-head and just put Miami in front. And they didn't do that. So the idea that they're going to do it now when nothing changed is crazy to me.
I didn't realize we had so many comments. I'm just looking at them right now. Good morning, everybody.
Yeah, we got people saying all hell will break.
We love to hear ourselves talk, but we want to hear from you guys too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Miami's not number 9, turn the TV off.
The TV will be off.
We're aware. Yeah, and that's BS.
Yeah. Hey, Pimp Down, how you doing?
Kenty, summer regulars are out here. These are all regulars. I agree. I think that was done for 2 reasons, Chico. I think one is to give Alabama also protection, because the other thing they were worried about is if they had kept Bama 10th, and let's say Bama lost a close game, obviously it's not, but lost a close game to Georgia, and BYU somehow won against Texas Tech, which obviously didn't come close to happening either. BYU had an auto bid come in, and if Bama's 10th, they're out. And in that scenario, I think that's why they moved them up, because you couldn't move them up after losing to Georgia, even if it's a close game. But if they left them 9th and they lost a close game to Georgia and BYU somehow won, they could put BYU in and drop Notre Dame out at 10. And I think that's what they were trying to mitigate. But yeah, also, but this whole thing about putting a team in between Miami and Notre Dame, that's artificially done. There have never been 2 teams with this much comparable metrics that all lined up evenly. The idea that they think there's actually a team in between the 2 of them is also crazy. The FPI is 1 spot apart. The strength of schedule is 2 spots apart. 4 common opponents. We have more common opponents with Notre Dame than the rest of the ACC.
Well, putting a team in between Notre Dame and Miami is, putting a team in between Notre Dame and Miami is just a way to safeguard Notre Dame.
Right, but it's a bullshit thing they made up this week.
Oh, I agree. Oh, yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. The fact that everyone's like, the fact that everyone's like, oh, well, if they do that, then it's fine. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Them manipulating the rankings to artificially put a team in between Miami and Notre Dame and saying, well, they weren't next to each other. If they made that shit up last week, like I am very frustrated with the way the media just sopped that up. And it's like, oh, yeah, no, if there's a team there, then that's how they avoid dealing with the head-to-head. No, you're going to have to deal with it. Because the metrics are basically identical. 4 common opponents, they each blew out all 4 of them. Like, they're basically, absent the head-to-head, that's basically a tie. And the way they're treating this is as if Miami beat some other 10-2 team and Notre Dame lost to some other team. Because if you think about the arguments being made, that's the way it's being treated. It's not being treated as, well, they actually played each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Mario keeps saying there's a lot of coaches in the room there, and they know the importance of what happened on the field, and they will not ignore it. They've been ignoring it for a month now, so I don't.
There are a lot of coaches there. They're all on the committee. They are going to ignore it at this point.
Yeah, and I do think it is telling though that CC about this BS that happens. Yeah, no, I guarantee you one thing: there will not be the same tiebreaker in place next year. They are going to change the tiebreakers, and they're going to figure something else out. Because the idea that there was a 5-team tie for second, and the team that won it is the only team that didn't beat anyone good during the whole regular season, but none of that mattered because they all didn't play each of the 5 other teams, is just. That's what happened with the tiebreaker. So the tiebreaker will definitely change, but it's always a year too late. They changed the BCS formula after Florida State went in front of Miami. Like, well, if this happened now, Miami would be in. Well, that doesn't do anything for you.
Yeah. No, I agree.
So yeah, they'll change it so that this wouldn't happen again. Like next year, in the same exact scenario, Miami would have played Virginia last night, won by 30, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. But
I mean, we still would be, but.
No, we'd be in. It would be like where we see it.
Yeah.
Right. But because of that, and actually, Bama and Notre Dame would be in too, because we'd have an auto bid from the ACC, which is now going to someone, probably James Madison. That's going to someone. And so, yeah, I mean, in a way, we created this situation by not winning the ACC, but the ACC created it by having that tiebreaker.
The ACC,
but again, Bama was the SEC has the same thing. No one, because it's the name brand, no one questioned why. Yes, they're all in the top 10 or ranked that way, but no one questioned why the 5th place team in the rankings in the SEC went to the championship game. But that's what happened, and I think that's relevant because the 5th place team in a conference that's ranked 9th, losing by 3 touchdowns and not dropping 2 spots at least is crazy. Texas lost to Georgia by 25 on the road, went from 10 to 17. How is losing to them by 21 at a neutral site and rushing for -3 yards not enough to just say you got to fall at least 2 spots?
Yep.
And everyone keeps bringing up last year's SMU situation without providing the context. First of all, they obviously lost on the last-second field goal, so they were competitive. But the second thing, after that loss, they were 11-2. Alabama was 9-3, and they were like, maybe we should bump Bama over them. Like, this is the opposite. They have a worse record now. Like, you were basically saying the conference championship loss by a 56-yard field goal on the last play of the game to a ranked team, by the way, that was just outside the playoffs, is so bad that maybe we should move up a team with a worse overall record.
Yeah.
That's what the argument was last year, and they said barely, no, we're going to keep. They dropped SMU 2 spots, by the way. They just kept them in. And this year, you're saying, well, you can't because of that? That's a completely different situation. You're now saying we're going to put the team in with a worse record and ignore a 21-point loss and not even drop them the same amount of spots we dropped SMU last year for losing on a last-second field goal. Yeah, the SEC is ridiculous. Like, they all were puffing their chests out for quality wins over Tennessee and Missouri, and those teams didn't beat a single team with a winning record this year. No, it is what it is. Will the committee actually keep an ACC team out of the playoffs? They were designed for the Power 4 conferences. However, this is a Power 2. And the question is, would they really prioritize the 5th SEC team, who no one actually thinks is a top 10 team, over the best team in the ACC? Yes, they would. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what that's where the money is. Yeah, and this is the other half. Yeah, no, I know everyone's just like, that's the other thing that's frustrating. Everyone's like, Oh, if they play now, even the ones that are supporting Miami are saying, well, if they played now, yeah, Notre Dame would win. Why do you think Notre Dame?
I don't
Because
see
they
it.
blew out. No, but maybe they will, right? But this is all projection. They have done nothing. They have done nothing that Miami has not also done. That's the frustration. Like, it would be one thing if they lost those 2 games and then they played 5 ranked teams and other 10-win teams and beat all of them. Like, okay, we might have to have a discussion. They literally played the same teams, Miami, and did the same thing against them. The only difference is instead of playing SMU and Louisville, they played Boston College. And they struggled, by the way.
Yeah, they did.
Like, this is nonsense. I mean, yeah, but these are all good points. I do think that change is coming to the playoffs too. I think this was the apocalypse.
Yeah.
I think. Well, no, it should be Miami is in, and then they can figure the rest out. Because for those that listen to the audio later, although you'd have to do a very fast download to have the actual results within an hour and a half. So, so the argument isn't Miami versus ND. It should be Miami versus ND versus the last 2 SEC teams. I think it should be ND versus those SEC teams because, again, they have criteria on their website. And Miami not only obviously beat Notre Dame, they also have the common opponent with Bama. There's decidedly, and actually, the next SEC team after that is Oklahoma. They also beat Alabama. So Miami and Oklahoma kind of distanced themselves from that pack because they played teams in that group and won. So then you're having a Notre Dame Bama discussion, and frankly, you got to put Notre Dame in. That team that played last night is not a playoff team, and it's not just one game. It's the same team that lost to Florida State. It's the same team that barely pulled out that win against Auburn, who went 5-7 and had an interim coach.
Yep.
Like their last 4 games are lost to Oklahoma, Eastern Illinois, or whatever the hell directional school they played. Miracle win against Auburn, killed by Georgia. Yeah, no, exactly. Like the game was played. No, this is what they're doing. They're saying, well, round 2 will go different. There is no round 2. There's just the game that was played. So, I mean, it's frustrating, but I think we kind of all know what's happening. I do agree with J-Rock here that, yeah, they're going to change the format. This year, they got rid of the auto seeding. If you recall last year, the top 4 conference champions got seeded. So if they did that this year, it would be Indiana 1, Georgia 2, Texas Tech 3, Tulane 4, Ohio State 5. But they scrapped that when they realized we can't give Boise State a bye. And I think this year they're going to scrap the auto bids entirely for conferences.
And I agree with the comment above J-Rocks too, because the ACC has managed to kind of box themselves into this corner and has not done a good job of asserting themselves in terms of, trying to, get that respect on a national level as the Big Ten and the SEC. And they haven't been able to do it for years. And now it's getting to the point where you're seeing just the Big Ten and the SEC become dominant players, and the SEC, through all their years of incompetence, is falling even further than it used to.
And I'll add to this, part of their issue is they should not be mirroring what the SEC and the Big Ten do, because those conferences play by a different set of rules.
Yep.
And so if Miami was in the SEC, they'd be ranked like 5th.
Yep.
Look, they went out of conference and won a big game. Yeah, they lost, but that's the mighty SEC. You lose to 2 8-4 teams in the SEC. Could you imagine, just to put this out there, if Bama had gone and beat Notre Dame and then lost to Missouri and Tennessee in conference? They would be ranked 6th. That's what Miami did the equivalent. Those teams are not better than SMU and Louisville, but the ACC's inability to understand where they are in the pecking order and understand their teams can't get, like, they need divisions. So what the SEC has done smartly is they've kept their teams from playing each other. Mega conference. Ole Miss basically beat OU lost to Georgia, didn't play anyone else good the entire season. They're in because they're SEC. The ACC needs their top teams. They need Miami and Georgia Tech playing. They need Duke to play the other teams.
Yeah.
They need those games because they got to boost their profile.
Big time.
They're not going to get 6 teams in because everyone has one loss like the SEC will. And that is the mistake they made in kind of mirroring what the SEC did with the mega conference one division thing. SEC did that because they realized the less we play each other, they're going to say we're good anyway. And that's exactly what Ole Miss has won one game against Oklahoma. Georgia killed them. They didn't play anyone else.
Yeah.
They almost lost to Washington State at home. Like, I don't think people have looked at their resume. But it doesn't matter because they got the magic logo. The ACC is not a magic logo.
Yeah.
It's a pile of shit. And so they should have known that.
ACC's incompetence, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, they've created a mess here. Let's see what else we got here in the comments.
We got a bunch here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, there's
I
yes,
definitely agree with what Lenny's saying.
There's an element of that, though, right? Because there's a couple of things, right? One is, yes, if we'd won one more game, then we're obviously in easily. So, yes, we should have won the ACC. However, losing to 2 8-4 teams is not anything disqualifying to any other team. And all I would say is you got to be judged by your peer group. The resume is better than the teams they're putting in, and we beat one of the teams that they're putting in. And that's a problem. And it's not on Miami. It's actually on the entire conference and all of the schools to have this convoluted tiebreaker. The idea that a 7-5 team wins a tiebreaker over a 10-2 team is just stupid. And I think that's the problem, right? That conference championship game featured one team that went 7-5 and another team that technically went 7-1 in conference, but lost another game to a team in the conference that was out of conference. I mean, if there's no more convoluted idiocy,
I still don't understand that. Like that, and so behind that, yeah.
And so, yes, look, the Canes should have won one of Louisville and SMU, and we're not having this conversation. They lost twice. I get that. But they shouldn't be held to a different standard than everyone else. Notre Dame should have won one of A&M or Miami. If they're a top 10 team and they get 2 chances to prove it and they lose both those games, what does that say about that? Bama just had to not lose by 3 touchdowns yesterday, and they couldn't do that. So, like, I get the arguments that, like, Miami could have done more, but all these teams could have done more, but Indiana. Everyone else lost games, and at the end of the day, the playoff format lends itself to there is give and take there, and that the ACC tiebreaker put a team that's not even close to the top of the conference in the conference championship game, actually just like the SEC did. Because Mississippi, Oklahoma, Georgia, they're all better than Alabama. Alabama won that tiebreaker anyway.
No, I am just reading some of the comments here, just kind of going through them.
No, I mean, so it's not that there's no fault of Miami's, and yes, they should have been better, but, you know, they did win games, but essentially you play that. This is the funny thing, right? So as Texas was complaining about, why would we schedule Ohio State if we lose and it hurts us, which is such a stupid thing to say, right? Like, why play any game then? Just play UTEP 12 times and say you're the best. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But you play that game so that when you win it, it builds in that buffer, right? Let's say they beat Ohio State. Not only are they in easily now, but if you get into a situation where now you're going with Ohio State for the last spot, or, you know, you need to be, you've got that win over them, you're going to be in front of them. Miami did that against Notre Dame. So I said this last week. If BYU had won and they got in, and Bama won, and both Miami and Notre Dame are out, that is a fair result because, as everyone's pointing out, Miami should have won the conference. But if you put that Notre Dame team in there, I have a big fucking problem with that. And I think that is the thing that is frustrating. If we didn't play Notre Dame and beat them, and we all saw it happen, and by the way, that game was not that competitive. The score was much closer in the game. If and that's what Nick Saban went on game day and said, Miami kicked their ass. What are we talking about? Because again, I think a lot of the coaches and football, you look at a lot of the former players now, they're all like, one team won. What are we doing? And I think it's only the journalist side of the house that's trying to justify this. Because I think anyone that's played knows all you want is a chance to play on the field, and if you lose, you take your loss. And Notre Dame took their loss, and it doesn't matter. I think that's why we're pissed off. It's not that Miami couldn't have done better. And if BYU had won yesterday, they absolutely deserve to be in, and Miami does not. But if you have a spot for Notre Dame in this playoffs, and you don't have one for Miami, that is low. And I think that's why Canes fans are on edge and pissed off. Because you schedule that game so that way when you win it, it gives you a bump up on that team, and they're not getting credit for that. Notre Dame's getting more credit for losing that game than Miami's getting for winning. And that is absolutely ridiculous. And I think that's where the frustration is.
I'm just reading some of these comments, and I agree with J-Rock, but I don't trust that a Mayo Cristobal team will be out for blood if they can't even stop their penalties. So,
well, I mean, that's where the blood comes from, but
I mean, and I kind of
I will say, I don't know if you saw this. I mean, it's like everything's like picking a scab in the bleed out, but like in the Georgia Alabama game that we played, I think it was in the second quarter, maybe the third quarter, where they blew the play dead, and Georgia went to hit the Alabama quarterback. Of course, not only did they not call a flag, Kayla DeBoer, everyone said he was yelling because he thought it should have been a flag. He was yelling because he thought that Georgia like induced them by faking a hut, by faking a cadence. And like no one in the commentary said, "Oh, that's got to be a flag." And we lost that SMU game because of that. That's just those little things like that add up. But I don't know.
I mean, it's just tough, and I mean, I agree with TNC's
so what
comment.
Would you do? What would you do if you were the committee? Obviously, we're Miami shows, so I don't expect to say you keep Miami out. But what do you think is fair here?
It's a tough question. I wouldn't have Notre Dame in. So I would drop Alabama, keep Miami in, and put Miami in, not keep Miami in, but put them into the conversation, have Notre Dame out, and I'm kind of struggling to do with what to do with BYU because
BYU's out.
Yeah. It was
there's only two. There's two spots. It's going to be two. I mean, if you want to include BYU, that's two for Miami, Notre Dame, Alabama, BYU. There's only two spots.
So, Miami and Alabama.
It's interesting. I would put Miami and Notre Dame.
Notre Dame's schedule is just so bad.
It is. It's the same, and we know because we played it basically.
Yeah.
But actually, no, we didn't because we played the harder ACC teams like SMU and Louisville, and they got Boston College instead. And then they played Arkansas and Purdue, were the two last place teams in the SEC and the Big Ten. So they did play a soft schedule. But I don't see how you can. So the way I view this is it's got to be either Alabama 9, Miami 10, because you've got to say that game yesterday is a mulligan and we're not counting it at all. Or you're looking at it and saying, we got to count that. And if you count that game, there's no way you drop one spot losing like that. I'm sorry. They got to be back there with Texas because their resumes are actually the same now. Let's not point that. Bad loss to a Florida school that's not Miami. Blown out by Georgia. They basically have the same best win as Vanderbilt. They have the same damn resume.
Yeah. I also
so in my opinion, if you're gonna say this didn't matter at all, then you can leave Bama at 9. If you're saying it matters some, then you got to punt them. Texas fell from 10 to 17 for losing to Georgia by 25 points. How is Alabama going to drop one spot? You either count that game or you don't. If you do, they got to go. And that's why I put Notre Dame in. But there is no universe where Miami shouldn't be in. Because if you say, let's just do a resume watch here. If you say you're going to lean on strength of schedules, Alabama's is differentiated higher than Miami and Notre Dame. So maybe put them 9 and say, okay, strength of schedule gets them there. Then you got a head-to-head. Miami has to go in front of Notre Dame. So that's one scenario. Let's say you talk about who has the best wins. It's Alabama, then Miami. Notre Dame has no good wins. They're out. You say we're going to punish you for the worst losses. That's Bama. They're out. There is no logic you can consistently apply to these 3 teams that has Miami out, which is exactly why Miami's going to be out. Because that's the way this committee works. Yeah, no, I mean, look, these are the rules that they were written. It's the same conversation people were having last week about, like, why doesn't the ACC just change the rules and put Miami in instead? Dude, you cannot do that. This is what people signed up for. It's going to be awful. I mean, Ole Miss already beat Tulane by 3 touchdowns. Like, this is going to be bad. Those games are going to be completely – you're going to fly JMU out to Oregon, to Eugene to lose by 70 points. Like, this is going to be bad. And the same thing, I forget who's in 6th now. I think it was Ole Miss last week. So maybe get a rematch with Tulane. Like, those are not going to be competitive games. But this is – I honestly am surprised that given that, you know, as someone said way earlier in the show, you know, the P4 was set up. This conference was set up for this thing was set up to favor the P4. I'm surprised they held after last year onto that okay, we're going to automatically give the G5 spots away. I'm surprised they didn't kill that. I think this will be the death of automatic bids because I think anyone would much rather see, I think what would end up happening is Miami, Notre Dame, Bama, and probably Texas would get in, which I don't think is fair to have 6 SEC
absolutely
teams.
not.
But that's what would have happened if there are auto bids.
Yeah.
Well, what would end up happening is we'd be right now arguing which of the 2 SEC teams should get in, Vandy, Bama, or Texas, which of those two of those 3. But I think people would much rather watch Texas go to Oregon than watch JMU lose by 75 points, which is what's going to happen, and much rather watch Alabama, Mississippi. So I think this is probably the end of this format.
I would hope so.
Because also what happened last year, because the conference championship got seeded, right? Boise State ended up being a seeded team. Arizona State was, remember, Clemson was not, so they ended up going to Texas in the first round. But they ended up playing on a neutral site in the quarterfinals, and those games were somewhat competitive. In fact, Arizona State really should have beat Texas. There was some officiating nonsense there. But because they switched it now, like if they had sent Boise State on the road to play, like I think it was Penn State was 5th or Ohio State or whatever the hell, like they would have lost by 80 points. And so I think, you know, that's what's going to happen this time.
Yeah, no,
those
I
are the
agree.
rules. Like you can't. Yeah, it's a good question as to why they didn't. Well, first of all, they didn't anticipate the ACC being so bad, or I guess not even so bad, because again, if the ACC was a well-run conference, Miami would have been in the conference championship game and won it, and we wouldn't be having these conversations. Because it's not, we're having these conversations. And they didn't anticipate the ACC champion being ranked so low that, you know, that 2 G5s would make it in. But they certainly could have anticipated 1 G5, and I don't think anyone needs to see Tulane. Let's say Virginia had 1. They would be 11th. I don't think anyone needs to see Virginia go get killed by Ole Miss, and I certainly don't think people need to see Tulane go to.
No.
I mean, so like I don't know why they didn't anticipate that, but I'm assuming they're worried about some kind of antitrust lawsuit. That's why they keep throwing the G5s a bone. But there's no reason to have automatic qualification, especially if you're going to say that Alabama is still in. If we're going to do that, then then you're automatically in the conference. You're automatically in the playoffs by just making the conference championship game. Because like I don't, is that an auto bid? Like I don't understand what happened there. But like that's just there's no logic to any of this. I agree because I don't. We're not going to cancel ND, but yeah, that's all fine. But like I just I don't see any kind of. I think we're gonna get screwed here. I feel like that's the way this has been headed for weeks, and the only thing that's happened as more evidence is piled in that the committee is wrong, they've dug their heels in. Like they had a get out of jail free card last week, and they didn't take it.
Yeah,
because they easily could have put Miami in front of Notre Dame and said, "Hey, we honored the head-to-head. Now that their resumes are basically identical," and they didn't. They wedged BYU in the middle and made up some shit about they have to be next to each other. They also, because Alabama damn near lost to a 5-win team, they could have penalized them for that and put Notre Dame and Miami in and said, hey, BYU and Alabama need to win their games and they'll be in. And again, it would have been cleaner. They've avoided every on-ramp to make this a clean decision. And I don't think they're going to do the right thing today. I think we know where this is going.
I agree. My hopes are not high. My hopes are not high for what they're going to do today. I do see a question from 850 Kane that as the resident tight end expert, I have to honor before we continue any of this conversation. He asked me what I think of the new tight end commitments, and I do have to say that I love them both as well. I don't know if you want to talk recruiting or kind of slide into this, Vish, if you wanted to.
Yeah, you can talk about tight ends. We're going to do a thorough breakdown of the early sign day class next weekend. Obviously, this weekend the focus is elsewhere.
First off,
but 850K, Danny, what do you think of those tight end commits we just signed? I love them both. Caps locked.
Yeah, no, I absolutely do love them both. I think Mueller is a very good athlete, very good running at the second level. As soon as he gets the ball, he can explode really well. Briggs played on the outside as a wide receiver in high school, but his size, you move him to tight end, and he's very good at tracking the ball. He's very good at his initial first step. He fires as soon as the ball is snapped. So I think Miami got two really, really good athletes at the position, and big targets. The way I see it, big targets for the quarterback in the red zone, and guys that aren't just lumbering blocking tight ends, but guys that can make things happen and add to an explosive offense. And with the way Miami plays, I could see them both fitting in nicely due to that explosive capability and their ability to, run fast, get to that second level, and find the red zone.
Yeah, and again, we'll do a thorough class breakdown. Kane signed up again the top class in the ACC again this year. It's stellar. It's a top 10 class. So we're gonna break that down fully next Sunday morning. Today again, we're about an hour away from an epic screw job. Yeah, no, it's a scam. To have people just decide based on. I think one of the issues here, and again, thanks for the dono, Mohammed. One of the issues here is we pretend like they're actually doing analysis. We're looking at this metric and that, and this is the FPI. And no, they're just pulling it out of their culo. Because, again, they print on their website, this is what we look at. Miami is in easily looking at that, and we're going to let them almost certainly be out. There's almost no chance. I agree.
Yeah. I do not have high hopes today.
Yeah.
Let's see.
That's fine. I don't know. So, Martin, if we win that game, I'm unclear what counts and what doesn't at this point. Because earlier we were told, our win didn't count because it was in the first game. Bama's loss in the last game doesn't count. So I don't know what counts and what doesn't, to be honest, at this point.
Let's see. It says the most watched selection show in history will be today. The backlash will be massive. And you know what? The powers that be won't care.
Right. Well, I mean, this is what's going to happen, right? So Yeah, like and someone pointed out basically everyone except for Joey Galloway, who for some reason just absolutely hates Miami. And even you know, has over talked and shut down his co-hosts as they try to advocate for my. At one point, EJ Manuel was like, "Stop it! I'm going to advocate for Miami anyway." Because he was trying to make a point, and Joey Galloway just like interrupted, like, "No, no, no, you can't." And I don't know what's going on with him. He's got a mental deficiency, but everyone else has basically said Miami should definitely be in. And they're not going to be in. So what's going to happen is they're going to show the rankings. They're like, "Oh, Miami got left out." They're going to go around the room. Everyone's going to say, "This is crap. It's not fair." They're going to ask the committee chair. He's going to say, "We actually really just compared Miami. We compared Notre Dame and Alabama because Miami, blah blah, whatever horseshit he says." And then people are going to complain about it, and then they're going to move on. And that's what's going to happen. Like
I agree with A50 Kane on both of his comments there. He says he wanted to talk about tight ends because he knows we're getting screwed today, and he told his friends to quit talking to me about the playoffs or the SMU game. I was there as well, but I realized that this is a hot topic of discussion.
Yeah, I mean, we can't bury that. We'd actually
yeah.
I mean, we kind of show planned live on the show last week. We were just going to do recruiting and actually talk about bowl projections and where it looks like Miami might go.
Where does it look like Miami's going to?
It's hard to say. They're trying to sort out. Well, they need to confirm Miami's out of the playoffs, which should happen in about an hour. But then I think technically Duke gets the top bowl because they won the conference. So it is that we'll get the second one. I'm not sure what that is. But yeah, no, it's not going to be a. Yeah, so that was my plan for the show, is actually to break the recruiting class down and then look at the bowl options. Yeah, no, I mean, this is a good point. Why would we play any of these games if we have to win the conference to get in?
Yeah.
All right, man. Your lips to God's ear. Yeah, Ping 9207 says Miami is in. Trust me, fellas. I would honestly opt out with the bowl game if we don't get in. I don't think we're going to, but I would, because I don't think there's any point in playing with like third stringers, because I think all of our players will pretty much.
They need to redo the bowl system because half of these players aren't even going to be playing. You know, a lot of them are resting for the draft. You know,
these are opinions, by the way. These are not sourced.
Yeah, so clearly we don't we're not sourced. These are just.
I mean, even I can tell you that before the games were played yesterday, this is obviously assuming BYU would lose, because if BYU won, then I think Miami and Notre Dame would have. Well, who knows now with the way Bama played, but I think the thinking going in was Bama was relatively safe. And if BYU win, they were in. If BYU lost, it would be a Miami Notre Dame discussion. I think the feeling around the program yesterday, I was around a little bit, was that it was more of a coin flip. They weren't sure which way it was going to go. I don't know how those results yesterday changed anything in terms of just the margin. I do think it brought Alabama back into play as an option to be left out. And I think the committee is deciding between three things. One, doing the right thing, which is Miami is nice. They have the shit printed on their website that says common opponents and head-to-head, and Miami has that on both of the other teams. That's the right thing. They can do, but the question is, why have they stubbornly refused to do the right thing with regards to Miami and Notre Dame? And so if we're assuming they were protecting Notre Dame and Alabama, they'll continue to do that. So that might be out, and that's my assumption.
Yeah. I do not
know. The one thing that Alabama losing like that opens up is if they were protecting just Notre Dame, they do now have an option to leave Alabama. Mm-hmm. And it's actually the easiest option. Because as much as the FCC heads will complain, they still have 4 teams in the playoffs. And it's pretty easy to say we don't need a 5th team from that conference that just lost by 3 touchdowns and also lost to one of the worst teams in the ACC. I think you'll be fine with your 4 teams. And so that's the easiest thing to do. But I also think it's the thing that most of us will upset their media partners.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, a lot of it is about views and ratings and stuff like that, and it shouldn't be too.
Well, no, Miami will get ratings too. I think there's a misconception that Miami's TV ratings are like some of the top in the country. This is strictly about a business relationship. The SEC, ESPN, the College Football Committee, are interlocked, and it's also specifically about that team, Bama. If you look at the history of this selections, they always get pushed up, propped up. They've invented new rules for them multiple times. And so this will be another one. You don't get punished for your conference championship game is a new rule they invented in the middle of that game that they're now going to enforce. So because Bama's benefited several times, they have several national championships because they got into the playoffs based on teams getting punished for losing their conference championship game.
Yeah.
So, but not. It's always, if you notice, every time there's a new thing, there's new that, it always benefits Bama. So I think the specific team matters too. If Vanderbilt had lost to Florida State and went in with 2 losses into that game and lost like that to Georgia, no one would be saying Vanderbilt needs to be in the playoffs. It's the branding. You can't do that to Alabama. And I think that's the problem that Miami's going to run into. Because Miami is a big brand, but they ain't Notre Dame and they ain't Alabama, and that's what they're running into. And they're going to get left out on vibes.
I agree.
And that's what it is.
That's all right.
And so, yeah. Wow. On that positive note, so yeah, there's some criticism of the commissioner. Yeah, no, there's been no
there's
no
an ACC
foresight.
Commissioner. I didn't know that.
Apparently,
Yeah.
I've actually met him, but they had no foresight on this.
Yeah.
You could easily, as much as everyone's like, well, how do you do the tiebreakers? Because again, there is an issue with like everyone's saying to use the CFP rankings. They don't come out till Tuesday. You can't wait until Tuesday to know who's in your conference championship game. But they could have easily put in, like, you can do things like, hey, if you're not ranked, period, you're disqualified. Or, hey, if you lose 5 damn times, you're not going to go to the conference championship game. And, like, there are things that you can do. Anyway, we'll see how it plays out. But again, I expect Miami to get screwed, and then I expect everyone to complain, not just Miami fans, but everyone. I know Booger McFarland's going to lose his damn mind and be like, I cannot believe they ignored what happened on the field. And then a day from now, they'll be talking about the bracket and whatnot, and Miami, and no one's going to give a shit. And that's the truth. So there will be a momentary, this is bullshit, and then they'll just move on because that's what they do.
Yeah.
But we won't move on. We'll be talking about this one forever. It's going to go up
I don't
there
know about forever because I'm sure this will happen again.
No, but this is going to go up there with 2000 beat FSU and they put them in instead. And it's going to go up there with the 2002 Fiesta Bowl where the call pass interference after the game was over. It's going to be in that conversation. There's no reason. There's no reason the 5th place team in the SEC needs to lose by 21 points and still be in. Like, there's just no reason, but that's what's going to happen. And honestly, if it wasn't that conference, this is not even a tough decision to make. Actually, you lose like that, you've already lost to Florida State. Yeah, you're the 5th team in your conference. You need 5 teams out of 12. You need 5 from one conference. No, you don't. 4 is enough. You can have a third of the damn field. You don't need a 5th team. So, again, if they had any cojones, this would be easy. Hey, we evaluated. Bama has been playing like shit for a month. We don't think they're a top team right now, and we couldn't put them in and just leave them out. And as much as a few people, even, the funny thing is, I don't think Bama fans in particularly want to think they should be in. I've talked to several of them, and they're like, we know good football when we see it. We've been watching it. That ain't it. like they know this is not a team that's not up there with the teams they've been watching for the last 2 decades. They've crushed everyone. So, I think So I don't know. Like I don't think and even Greg Sankey was not as assholey as he usually is. When they asked him, he's like, "Well, I don't think this is more of a reward. I don't think they should be penalized." He's like, "Yeah, we'll look at things with the conference championship game if Bama gets left out." And then he was like, "But Georgia got screwed a few years ago when they went undefeated and lost the conference championship game and dropped out, and we didn't change anything." That Georgia, this is another one. That Georgia team, undefeated, 2-time defending national champion, 12-0, goes to the SEC championship game, loses to Bama, they're out. But you can't drop this team out? Come on. Yeah, no, I agree.
I've been preparing for the snub since mid-October, quite honestly.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, that first ranking came out and it was 18. It was going to take a lot. I will say, until yesterday, we got 0 results we needed.
Yeah, yeah.
Like literally, like OU could have lost to LSU, or Bama could have lost to Auburn, and every week it was like that. Or Bama could have just beat Oklahoma, and Oklahoma would have been out. Like there is so many like. This thing came together in a way that was such like exactly bad for Miami until yesterday when all the results went Miami's way. But yeah, no, there was one game going a different way away from Miami basically easily being in, because you just needed another Oklahoma loss or another, and Bama should have beat them at home and they didn't. And it's
and A50 Kane kind of hits it right on the head with this last comment here. And I know, we can go through all these hypotheticals and schedule breakdowns and strength schedule and stuff like that, but in a situation where you're Miami and there's even more, less margin for error, you got to beat Louisville and or maybe beat SMU, lose to Louisville, beat Louisville, lose to SMU. But point is, little margin for error already.
Yeah, this little margin for error, but it's also just I mean, Mark Ingram came. Several Bama alums were like, "No, we shouldn't be in. You can't play like that in the end." But again, Mark Ingram works for Fox. There is an SEC college football playoff ESPN media industry complex that's again. If it was anyone else, don't even be in. How come no one's saying to leave BYU? Do you see what I mean? Like no one's even considering that BYU should still be 11th. It's the same logic they're using for Bama. It doesn't matter if you get blown off the field in the championship game. That was a reward.
Yeah.
But that's so, yeah. So, like, the people that aren't associated with ESPN are in lockstep that Bama shouldn't be in. ESPN's people are more saying Miami should be in, and it's the Bama decision. But the committee is likely beholden to Bama and Notre Dame and not Miami and not the ACC because Jim Phillips sucks.
Yeah.
And has no political will, and he has no political power. They're more worried about Greg Sankey getting mad about the 5th SEC team than they are about locking the ACC out. That should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah. ACC.
But yeah, to your point, yeah, we could have done more. We should have done more. But this is, again, I keep going back to this. If there is room for that Notre Dame team, then we should be in. If there was a scenario where both Notre Dame and Miami are out, and I said this last week, if BYU's in and Bama's in and we're out, I'm okay with that. That's where like shouldn't have lost to SMU. I am not okay with Notre Dame being in instead of us. Because why the hell did we play them? Why did we beat them? So you could just say, look at how well they played against Navy. They're better than you now. Like, what are you serious? It's actually insane if you start breaking down what they're actually saying. They played a lot of worse teams, and look how impressive they looked. Therefore, we think they're better than you now, even though you beat them. It's just insane. Like, it'd be different if they beat A&M and been like, oh, okay. They beat another top 10 team. They don't even have a good win. Their best one's USC. Those bad losses Miami had, those teams are just as good as USC. Like, I don't even understand what's happening. Like, this is insane. Their arguments are crap. And so that's why I'm upset. If we got left out because other teams did better than us, that's fine. Notre Dame is not that team. They played the same fucking schedule. We beat them on the field. Their metrics are identical. There's no valid reason for that. But like I said weeks ago, like it doesn't. If BYU is in front of us at 11-1, more power to them. They took care of business better than we did. Now they got blown, their doors blown off yesterday, so they're dead. But like I was okay with that. I'm not okay with Notre Dame. If Notre Dame's in and we're not, that's a problem. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah. I agree with you.
But we're about 50 minutes away from, I think we all know what's gonna happen. Anyway. We'll talk about that on the Six Rings Kane show tomorrow. That is at 8:30 tomorrow night. So we will definitely be talking about this, and we will have at that point we'll know what bowl game Miami's playing in. So we can talk about that a little bit next week. DJ and I'll come back and do what we were going to do this week, which is break down the recruiting class in detail.
Yeah, I was not prepared for the recruiting this week. But
there's no way. I'm sorry. There's just no way anyone's interested in that talk today with like an hour before where this is going to happen. But we will be talking recruiting next. We'll be talking about recruiting next week, as well as, again, Miami will have a bowl game solidified at that point. So we'll see who's even going to be on the field for the Kansas night game, because it's likely not going to be half the team. But anyway, DJ, thanks for hanging out with me on this Sunday morning. Everyone, if you've got some Santeria or something, we'll sacrifice a goat. We'll do what's needed here, but I don't think it's going to help at this point. But DJ, thanks for hanging out. Everyone, make sure to follow us on our socials. 5 Reasons Kane, 6 Rings Kane. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow night to talk the fallout from what's about to happen to this program. And then we will be back on next Sunday to talk recruiting and the bowl game. Thanks, DJ. And even regardless of what happens, go Canes.
Go Canes.